this experience working with a startup for a main reason. The main reason is that our clients, which are usually big organizations, there's a trend that they want to promote creativity inside the companies by creating innovation platforms and pushing their leading innovator to use and to go outside to see how they can concretize their idea. And this presentation, I made it for the French government, the CTO of the French government. It's the new role created, I think, something like 2 years ago. And the question was how a big company like Capgemini can work with a kind of startup. And I still don't have any clear response about that, answer about that. And this presentation is also the occasion to gather people around the subject and build a kind of community to work on it. I know that Capgemini Consulting already start to work on it, and it will be very useful to do the same on the Sogeti side. So, what is a startup? For that, I will use simple words that match everybody's mind. Usually, it's one person with an idea, and this person wants to put to concretize as soon as possible this idea, to put it on the market. These people know his subject, but he doesn't know a word about our world. This kind of organization are very reactive, while we have the inertia of Big Five. We have many projects, whereas their life is suspended to the success of only one. We are big, while they are small. So this is the purpose of the picture I put on the first slide. Okay, let's start, but we'll start with a journey. First, I will talk about the Talk Different project. In fact, this project is first of all a meeting between Mrs. Spitz, which is the mother of a young daughter, and Sogeti Director of Innovation during the DFIH in 2013. Mrs. Spitz is very involved in disability association, and during this DFIH is a challenge that it's a conquest for high school, for universities and School of Engineer to compete and around the subject of handicap and propose application in this area. And during this period, so she met Jacques Mesraïd, which leads the DFIH for Sogeti. So we made a commitment to support the creation of this startup. It was not yet created at this time. The creation came late at December 2013, and so we play. We may with risk, but we play. We make commitments, and now the application is on the stores, Apple Store and Google Store. Talk Different is a communication tool, intuitive. You can really play with it. and it's a very low price, which means that if you compare, there was already some application on the store for tablet, and they were really poor graphic, no communication with other mobile. So really not, you can't really play with it. It was really for the medical domain sector. And this characteristic of being playful, intuitive, make this tool really innovative. You can use it also in for different purpose. I mean, if I'm French and I go to China, I can express myself by showing pictures, and with the text-to-speech, the translation is immediate in China with the image, so I can make someone understand me in another context. And in this context, I'm handicapped. So you consider that Talk Different. It's a really inclusive application. It was developed by the Digital Center of Excellence, which is based in Rennes, and we use for that the last technologies about with HTML5, JavaScript, and the AngularJS framework. Well, it's responsive. That means you have only one source code, which is split into Apple platform and Android platform by PhoneGap. I was talking about a journey. Yes, it is. It's a journey through a matrix of technology. From the beginning means in May 2013. The fact was to understand what Mrs. Pitts wanted. Well, she has to explain, and we have to translate observation to understand how she formulates the problem of communication with handicapped people, and in particular with people which suffer from autism. And by iteration, we translate her vision into a clear and shared vision between her and Sogeti and the development team. After that, the thing is, during this travel, this journey, you have to use a certain kind of tool to make clear the translation of observation, of formulation, and of problem and vision into clear requirements that you have to automate it before going to the build platform and deploy on the Google and Apple platform. So as you can notice on the right, this matrix is with colors, red, yellow, and green. And for that, the thing is to use this matrix to reveal block roads, which can be a problem which can be problems to solve during the development process. And for that, we use something some of them know. Some of you, know. It's a kind of, it's not the Technovision matrix, but it's very intuitive. It's a matrix that where you put in column user aspect, collaboration aspect, data aspect, process aspect, application aspect, and infrastructure aspect. On the line, you put your business driver. Well, the main business driver, which was formulated by the client, was the application will have to be usable by all, simply, and everywhere. So you split this into 3 smaller business drivers, which are accessibility, simplicity, and ubiquity. And with Post-it, you just have to put well, this kind of matrix. You have the client, you have an architect, technical architect, and you have on the side of Sogeti a kind of business analyst, which was the play I will say I also play the role I also play. Sorry, and you have all the technical like graphists, etc. So you have to put the post-it on each cells and evaluate how mature the technology is to fulfill accessibility, for example. Here, if you look at the red one, speech synthesis, this technology is not enough, it was not enough mature at this time, and industrialized that you can use easily. So we have, we know that it will be block code for that. So we put it in red. For example, personal data. In France, there is a big constraint on personal data, legal constraint on personal data. So, but we know that there is a solution, in particular on the infrastructure side, to resolve this workload. So it's mature. There are standards, but we have to think about it. That's why it's yellow. And after you have all the green one, and the green one we saw it's just a normal design, normal development. So we know we can do this project. How we know that? Because if you look at the matrix for a far point of view, you will see it most green. So you can adopt a normal process of development. If you see more yellow, then you have to be careful. You have to be careful about delay, about time consuming, about cost, etc. And if you see red, then mostly red, then it's a research and development project. So you can look at this matrix on different level, and it's really very helpful. And it's very good tools to analyze the roadblock. And another fact, because you are around the matrix with the client and all the stakeholders of the project, then everyone already from the beginning share the same vocabulary, and everyone learn from each other about the right word to use to make it be understandable. So one of the main goals of this matrix is also to facilitate the dialogues between business and technique. And after that, if you have some yellow, then you can use a framework like the IAF framework to elaborate some scenario for your project. For example, I put here responsive design, and if you consider responsive design, okay, there are many solutions. We know how to do it, but the problem is on the governance aspect. If you consider the governance aspect, you have the life cycle of your product, the one you are building, and you have the life cycle of the tools that you use to build your product. And then we know that we could not afford with this tool at this time, because there was not enough tool in 2013, the end of 2013, beginning of 2014. There was just coming tools, they were not mature, so we know that we will have some problem about governance of these many life cycles of different tools with our product life cycle. So the consequence was we know that there will be a big effort on to do on tests. So this kind of framework like IAF is useful to elaborate scenarios on the blockworks. Another difficulty with to work with a startup is that you have someone which is very involved in this project and wanted to be on the market as soon as possible. And this person wants to dream and don't stop dreaming. So you have to put in place some mechanism that help him concretize his idea. So for that you have to provide tools, and simple tools. It's very important to be very simple tools. And for that, for example, you can use for example, mobile application or other application, but it's very useful for mobile application. You can use handwriting storyboard with the picture of the screen, empty screen, with space on the exactly what you have on the screen now, with the description of the feature and a space where the client can write and make and by hand his specification. And after that, when things are already with some go further, you can pass to tools like the one on the side, on the right side, face-to-face prototyping tool, and put that in a more formal way. Anyway, don't forget to make a formal description of your functional requirements. They have to be short, very concise, but they have to exist anyway, because you don't forget you have a contract with the client. And it's useful to put this requirement in a tool that you can transform easily, that exists, that you can transform easily in a test case for that you give to the client, because this kind of client doesn't have an organization behind that can help him to formalize test case. So imagine and think that you have to do it for him. One of the things is to get out the ideation phase of this kind of client, fostering a dynamic for realization. And for that, you have to stick on earth and talk about budget. Talking about budget weekly, monitoring what has been done, what have to be done, and especially on the technical side. It's better to work on agile mode, because they, and it was the case for us, they have to search for more investors. So you have to show, and we had to show 4 iterations to get money from these investors. The fact is also it's better to protect the idea very early. The fact that you make to give a name, because when you protect your idea, you have to give a name, you have to give a description, etc. And this process makes things much more concrete in the head of your client. So it's very good to start early to do that, and don't forget that the delivery time for IP, it's very slow. For us, it took 7 months from the beginning to the signing of the contract between the two companies. Yes, you have to also to adopt an agile approach and promote early stage. When you do that, you share definition early of the scope and of the vision. You have a better understanding of the expressed needs, and you explore the limit and constraint of the solution with their roadblocks much more early too, and so you can make prototypes. Another thing is to have tools to communicate and to collaborate. We use the TeamForge platform. It's not enough. There are many, many buttons, many pages on this tool. Okay, you can make customize it, but what we notice is that the client don't really like it because it's not so simple. So you have to search again simple tools to share documents, to share prototypes. I mean, paper prototypes or handwriting, storyboard, things like that, with your client, with the different team, developer, graphic designers, and the client. One thing is to take the phone. What I notice also is that people, to protect themselves and from their a bad decision, they write mails. I say, stop, hey, you have to take your phone first. Take the phone, and later you can confirm with an email, and it's much more efficient. Another thing is to make automation a leitmotiv. You have to search all possible axes of automation when you develop such project with such client. The fact is, in this kind of project, you will have to repeat things often, and you will have to test often. So automation is the only thing that can help you really. In terms of qualification, yes, what I said before, this kind of client doesn't have an IT department behind that can help to translate the idea into formal words that we can understand. So on the qualification phase, we have to help the client to transform the functional requirements into test case easily. It is important also for the client to understand and to have an assessment about the time you take to make things. So it is very important to explain how you build things, what you use, what is your process. So, and it is that, in fact, with this kind of project, development of mobile application, but you can find, I think, analogy with other kind of project. It's a paradigm of mass market application. What I want to mean by that is usually as IT companies that provide services in the development, we receive specification and we have to respect word by word what is written in this specification. In fact, working in this area, in this on this kind of project, which this application has to be used by people like you, like me, etc. In fact, the developer has to change his mindset. He has to ask his neighbor if what he has developed is has a good looking and is fun to use. An important fact also is that usually we develop an application for a defined set of targets. Here we don't have that. Okay, we know that we have the application has to work on Apple and on Android. But for example, Android, during this project, we have three minor upgrade of version of Android and one major from 4 to 5 version of Android. It was the same with Apple, with a big upgrade of version from 7 to 8 and 2 minors. So you have to take into account that you don't know exactly on what you will deploy. So you have to know that you will have to make lots of tests. And related with what I said before, the life cycle of the developing tooling must closely follow the life cycle of the different targeted device and operating system. Another paradigm that will be useful to follow is this kind of project. It's business without business analysts. So you have to be very careful about the level of communication you have with this kind of client. You have to promote drawings, sketching, and interaction. But anyway, you will have to formalize your the specification, and the best it's also to have. Okay, we said that with other project, but we don't do it. But in this case, it's mandatory. You have to share a glossary. Another thing is to foster proximity, of course. Every day I was talking with the client at a certain, during maybe 6 months, I have the client on the phone every day. So, and that's why we succeed, because it's a very important act to promote communication and proximity. As I said, first pick up the phone and confirmation by email later. The two most important phase once you have to be very close to the client is the design and the qualifying phase. The third paradigm is to take into account that the deployment phase is not under your control. What you have to know is, for example, that you can't evaluate, you can't assess the deadlines that Google or Apple have. Usually it's short for Google, 3-4 days, but it can be 8 days. For Apple, it can be 10-15 days. So you don't, if you have, for example, during Christmas holidays, it took something like 16 days to have a deployment, because Apple was closed doing something like 1 week. So it's not under your control, and you have to take that into account. Another thing is the content. If you have an application with some picture, picture for example, naked people, in this application, talk different. You have naked people on the shower to show to say that I'm under the shower. Okay, I will not show someone with clothes under the shower, so you have to be naked. But this is not allowed for Apple. It's your public will not be teenage. You have to be over 18 to download the application. So there are impacts, and you have to know these impacts. Legal may have impact on architecture and technical aspect. For example, for such an application, you can't use, but of course we have this problem with other project. You can't use tier components in your development without include them in the IP contracts. So you have to be careful with that. You have to know exactly what you are using to develop the application. So this is the most free challenge that you have to face when you develop such a project for such organization.
Patrick, I have a question. That is, can you please shed some light on how to work with lean startups? Something that runs on lean school of thought.
Okay, lean means also quite to adopt a full agile approach.
Yes, yes.
But it was not the case with us. In fact, we adopted semi-agile approach because a full Scrum, for example, will be very expensive in this project. And the client was not ready to use such approach. We took the decision to adopt a kind of waterfall and agile, waterfall with iteration. Okay, why? Because of costs of the agile approach, something like more than 30% higher price, and we are in a kind of confidence. The client knows that we are expert in the area, because she already asked for smaller companies to develop the application, and she was not really satisfied with the answers and they gave. And the way we made this journey was a great satisfaction. So I can say that it's a kind of lean, because there was not really requirements. At the end, there was requirements and they were formalized, but we made the job of requirements. And we made the job of requirements for two things: to have a contract, okay, and to foster the test, okay, and foster the qualification phase for this kind of client, which know nothing about testing. So that's why. So no requirements, or very low requirements. If you can say it's a lean situation, why not? Agile approach. If you can say we were a little lean, why not? Yes. So I think we are ready to work with a lean startup. Yes. Did I answer your question?
Yes, Patrick. Thank you very much. So, do we have any more questions? Oh, yes, we have one question from Thomas. He asks, "How did you estimate your costs per sprint, and how did you deal with changes?"
Well, there was, in fact, 3 steps on assessing the cost, and we use for that usual. There was a back office to build. Also, there is the front end, which is the application on the mobile device, and there was also the back office. It's kind of NTR application, okay, and we use for that usual ABAX for the assessment. But we took high risk gap or things like that around the price we gave. It's based on risk. The final cost is based on an estimation of risk, and the risk is high.
Okay, he asks, how did you get the customer to accept the risk?
I mean, it's a question of confidence too. I mean, we know each other, that we just know each other, so that's it. I mean, you have to accept the risk or no. I mean, and the risk is translated into financials. Without taking into account the level of risk we decide, which is translated into euro cost, we will not made this application. That's all.
What Thomas says is, so hearing from you, I believe the business case return of investment was positive. So that's what he says.
The return on investment is?
Positive?
Not yet. In fact, the return on investment is not positive for the client. Not yet, because there is cost of communication, there is the cost of development. So expected to have a return on investment is something like 2,000 download, and there is only in the last 4 months there is something like 1,500 downloading. So it's not, it's really not. But the client decide also to have, in fact, 2 business models. There is this business model based on downloading, of course, purchase of the apps. But as you remember, I told you that the price is very low to make the application accessible for all. The investors also know that it's an ethic project, So it's not a question to make money with the application directly. But anyway, money is it's mandatory to continue this project. So the client has another business model that I can't talk about now to make profit with this application. So there is not a return on investment right now on June 2015. The application is on the store since the beginning of the year. So there is no return on investment after 6 months.
So how long? So what should be the gestation gap here? So what are we looking at? So how long do you think it's going to take for you guys to see some returns really?
But this is the first step. This is the first step, and the first step is to make this application available. There are different steps like communicate on the right channel. Means not only in France but all around the world. And there is next step next year. I hope in Washington DC for the ICT inclusive mobile event in Washington. It could be a good vector for this communication. And I think also it will be useful to use not only the classical channel of communication via classical press, but professional who works with and promote this kind of application on the stores, Android and Apple stores. So there is a work to do on that, on the communication, and the apps need also more evolution. There are many things that are on the pipe to be developed, and to promote the social part better, and to have some useful features inside the application that will make it innovative, but not only with the communication aspect, but with new technologies for these features. Sorry. So there is other axis of development.
So I suppose that's it for today. Thank you for joining the session, and thanks a lot, Patrick, for your for a nice session. And well, we have recorded the session, and we are going to publish it on our blog. For those who have missed out, they can catch up. And so see you in 2 weeks with another interesting session coming your way.